Since the last time on the show, I found out I don't have any testosterone.
Oh no,
none. Like,
Zero?
okay, so it was actually not that long after the last appearance on the show. I started going crazy, like cuckoo bananas crazy.
So guys, Derek, moreplaysmoredates.com. Today we are going to be talking about Drift0r or Drift0r from the PKA podcast. So some of you guys may be here from PKA because I think some of their audience kind of migrated, and I get brought up on the podcast here and there, and I'm actually developing a product just for them right now. Me and Kyle, Woody, and Taylor have been working out the lock and load stack, which is going to be a PKA exclusive, or at least it's going to essentially be funneled like through their audience. They're going to get like first crack at, maybe we'll do pre-orders, I'm not really sure, but it's basically going to be like a Gorilla Mind collab PKA product, and that is in the pipeline right now. I can talk about that later. A lot of people have been asking me to break it down, but it's still in the process of being made. So anyways, and if you don't know what lock and load, basically it's literally a load stack. So, make massive loads. That's literally the point of the supplement. And it does a very good job at that, actually. So anyways, the reason I'm going over Drift0r is a bunch of people timestamped this and sent it to me and said he talks about his low T in here and how he uses Clomid monotherapy as his HRT protocol, which, I'm sure many of you have a stance on that, as do I. So I wanted to kind of react to it. And by the way, if you want to go listen to the literal lock and load results, it's in this episode of the same episode I'm reacting to of the Drift0r low test level. So anyways, apparently, so at this timestamp, it's called Drift0r's extremely low test levels and why his trolls call him a woman. So that is where we're going to be starting.
Found out, oh God, since the last time on the show, I found out I don't have any testosterone.
Oh no,
none. Like,
Zero?
okay, so it was actually not that long after the last appearance on the show. I started going crazy, like cuckoo bananas crazy.
Okay.
I would go a week without sleeping. I would be hyper aggressive, paranoid. I had all sorts of weird behavioral problems that I barely just kept my shit together good enough to make a stream every day and make everybody think I was normal. I decided something's wrong. So I went to the doctor and we did the diagnosis and stuff. And I thought that they were going to tell me that I had bipolar disorder, manic and depressive or whatever, because I had all the symptoms were there.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't realize that when you're low T, it's not just like, hypogonadal, equating to ED, equating to low motivation, low drive, etc. It's also makes your mood very volatile. You can go from being chill to all of a sudden wildly being anxious and annoyed or upset or whatever. So like a lot of people, they're worried that when they get on TRT or do anything hormone related, it's going to make them more angry or more, like roid rage. But in actuality, a lot of people who are low T are going to end up with that volatile mood because they are so wildly out of balance. Like too much of anything is bad, too little of anything is bad. So take that, remember that if you're looking at your hormones.
And a friend of mine, J-Hub, told me, hey man, check your testosterone just in case. And I told the doctor, and I wanted some lab work. I wanted to make sure I didn't have like a brain tumor or something that's driving me crazy. And the testosterone, the doctor's like, well, that's really weird because low test usually results in, for the brevity of this show, beta male type symptoms. Lower muscle mass, smaller body, really passive, low sex drive. I was the opposite. I was like Mr. Energy, go all the time, couldn't keep my dick in my pants, want to fight constantly. And I did it, and I found out that I had the testosterone of a 90-year-old man. Like I had single-digit testosterone numbers, and my entire system was totally out of balance.
You know what they were?
So he says he had single-digit testosterone levels, which is like under 10 on a reference range of what is typically 250 to 950, depending on where you get it done. There's no way he was actually measured in nanograms per deciliter here. Like he would not. I've even on nandrolone on its own, literally on nandrolone plus estrogen, I couldn't even get my test down to single digits because that's even your adrenals, like peripherally are going to produce enough testosterone, even if you're totally castrated, to produce more than 10 nanograms per deciliter of test. So no, this guy wasn't in single digits really of total test. So he's definitely getting the units of measurement wrong, or he's talking about a different unit of measurement entirely, because, you know, there are different values that are going to be used. As we mentioned before when we were looking at, I did a video on LabCorp's choice of units of measurement for free test levels. You know how sometimes you'll go in, you'll randomly get a 250, and then you go in and you get it like a 25, you know, like between two different labs, even though for some reason on paper it's the same unit of measurement. I go check out that video for that explanation. It's kind of elaborate. It'll end up taking 10 minutes if I explain it here, but basically I feel like he's just misinterpreting the results. I'm not saying he's not low. I'm sure he actually is. I just mean, like, I feel like single digits in, like, I've actually seen this clip. He goes on to talk about how it's in the context of, doesn't it go up to like, what's it say here?
Your T
It was like somewhere between 9 and like 11 or 12. It was just.
Are you talking about free testosterone or total?
See, Kyle knows what the fuck he's talking about, so he's saying, like, are you sure you're not talking about free? Because, like, that is where you would, if you were low T, you might see a free, like, around there maybe, as opposed to your total. So anyways, and then Drift0r goes on to elaborate.
It was like measured in nanoliters or something. I know that the average was like, what, 700 for men, if I'm not mistaken?
So he's referring to total T here, and he says 700. He's referring to nanograms per deciliter. He's probably talking about, I don't know, nanomoles per liter for his level or something like that. Like, I don't think he actually understands what he's talking about here. But either way, if you have a single digit total or free, like, it's not exactly good, obviously. So presumably, I would probably guess that his free is single digits, or it's his total and they're measuring in terms of, like, here I just pulled up the endomemo.com unit conversion tab just so I can show you guys what I'm referring to here. So here we have nanomoles per liter, we have nanograms per deciliter. So let's just assume if in fact he was referring to single digit total and we put in 9, that'd be 259 nanograms per deciliter. So yeah, like, I can see how that would be. That might make more sense if he's referring to a total, but he's thinking in his head about the nanogram per deciliter reference range while potentially referring to the nanomole per liter reference range that he got in his blood test results. So it's unfortunate that these labs don't just, like, consistently have the same units, and then it's not confusing for people, because then, you know, you show up, you get a fucking 10, and then you're like, isn't it supposed to be at like 700? And it's like not even fucking close. But yeah, so, like, let's just say he said he was at like 9 to 11 or something. So let's just say he was at 10. Like, either way, even if he was at 11, like, he's pushing 317 at best. And even if his free was in picograms per milliliter or nanograms per deciliter or whatever it was, that's not a good score either. So I can see where, you know, like, either way you spin it, he is indeed low T. So him saying his libido was good, though, like, it's probably not as drastically low as he thinks it is. Like, it's not good, it's fucking horrible still, but it's not like so low that you're like essentially a castrati, because that's like essentially what he's proposing here, is that his levels are single digits in a reference range going up to like 900, and somehow he's still, like, functioning, which, anyways.
But mine was like single. It was like way down there, like all in comical land. So I had to start taking Clomid, which is a fertility drug for women, but it has a side effect of boosting testosterone in men. So now I'm back to normal, and all of the weird behavioral problems went away, and I can think more clearly. And I don't really weird thing, but I still can't grow a fucking beard. I think I'm just too old for that.
So Clomid monotherapy, what do I think about it in general? And what do I think about the strategy for a guy who is low T? Would it make more sense to pop a pill? You know, it sounds a lot easier than literally injecting yourself with something. I can understand the appeal. I can understand the precaution of a physician to go to that as opposed to exogenous injections, because it's like, well, do we want to just shut you down and put you on T, or do we want to potentially try and stimulate your natural production and get a more natural way of backfilling your levels to a naturally healthy amount? The problem with clomiphene lies in the fact that it works through inhibiting the negative feedback in the body. So negative feedback is a tightly regulated mechanism in your endocrine system that determines how much testosterone and estrogen you produce, essentially. So if you have low, like let's just say your estrogen levels are on the low end of normal, your body is going to tell your hypothalamus, pituitary, gonadal axis that you need to produce more testosterone to then consequently aromatize into a sufficient amount of estradiol to hit those receptors in target tissues and fulfill those functions that are not adequately being fulfilled right now because of your lack of adequate hormone productions. So that's where you get the stimulating mechanism that goes from your hypothalamus down to your pituitary, down to your gonads, hence the HP, technically HPGA, even though it's often said as HPTA, testicular axis, whatever. So a lot of people make that kind of like distinction where it's like HP gonadal axis versus testicular axis because they don't want to get it confused with the other one. So it's like whatever. So anyways, that is what we're referring to here. And how does Clomid play into that? Basically what it does is it occupies estrogen receptors and basically prevents that negative feedback. So this is also why if you're too fat, your testosterone levels are going to go down because you have more estrogen production than the average guy or you would otherwise have if you were leaner. Hence, lower estrogen levels equates to less of that negative feedback telling your brain essentially, okay, we have enough estrogen levels so we don't need to make more testosterone to make that more estrogen. So if you have too high of estrogen from being too fat, you're basically telling your entire system, that entire negative feedback system, okay, we've reached enough estrogen, no more testosterone production. We don't need more because we already have this much estrogen. So as a byproduct of that, you have less testosterone because your fat ass has too much estrogen being produced relative to what you should be if you were like a healthy body composition. So this is why getting leaner is one of the easiest things you can do to raise your testosterone levels up until a point where you are depriving yourself of macro and micronutrients. And this is where you get this is why when you get to like sub 10% body fat, everything starts to down regulate and you literally go into a conservation, starvation state where your body's like, holy fuck, I'm actually starving right now. And everything starts to down regulate. So there's a sweet spot though, where you are lean enough that you don't unnecessarily prevent testosterone production. And you also don't go too far in the other direction where you're inhibiting your production of actual hormones through the intake of macro and micronutrients. So anyways, as far as Clomid, where that all plays in, like I mentioned, if you have too much estrogen, that is going to cause the negative feedback. However, if you have too little estrogen, like I mentioned earlier, that's where your body's like, holy shit, we need to make more testosterone to get enough estrogen to actually go provide neuroprotection in the brain, go provide cardio protection in the heart, do this, do that. And Clomid, when it binds to estrogen receptors and has this antagonist effect in certain tissues, it will inhibit this process, thus tricking you into thinking, I need to make more tests because I'm not getting enough estrogen receptor agonism at this part of the body. So then all of a sudden your HPGA is saying, get the test levels up, your gonadotropin spike, your test levels spike. So in your serum, you actually get a much higher spike in testosterone, consequently more aromatization into estrogen. And it is almost like a false reading based on what you see. It looks like everything corrected itself. You see your testosterone levels come back high end of normal. You see your estrogen levels go way up. Everything looks way better. If you were actually hypogonadal, you would probably have low T and low E if you were actually healthy and had good body composition. So anyways, everything goes up. Everything goes up to what it looks like would be good on paper. But what you have to consider is this a viable long-term strategy? I would argue no, simply for the fact that you are literally inhibiting the agonism of a receptor that is necessary for a lot of physiological functions in the body that are needed to maintain optimal health. So while in the short term, you can get that, that boost to get your everything kick started, you get your gonadotropin spiked, get more testosterone production going, everything gets back up to where it should be on paper, but you still have those estrogen receptors being occupied by the Clomid, and your estradiol, which is being aromatized from testosterone, cannot do what it needs to do in certain parts of the body when it's being occupied by Clomid. So while on paper, everything looks fine and dandy and everything looks to be corrected. And in the short term, you may have symptom relief. In the long term, you're likely going to encounter some level of issues. Now, this isn't the case for everyone. Obviously, everyone tolerates things differently, but there's a reason why there's like vision problems associated with SERMs. There's different kinds of issues that come from a result of chronic use of things like Clomid, Novadex, etc. And it's not simply that, oh, my level on a piece of paper in the serum is better now, therefore the tissue concentrations and actual agonism of receptors is perfect. Like, no, it doesn't mean that just because your estradiol looks good on a piece of paper that it's actually able to get to the receptors and do what it needs to do. This is literally the Clomid blocking it from what it's doing, artificially elevating the serum level. So no, it doesn't mean you're like, maybe it's helped him in the short term to get his test levels to where it should be, but his estrogen levels, his estrogen is not going to be able to do what it needs to do everywhere that it needs to do what it needs to do in the long term, which likely could have a backhanded effect on him where all of a sudden he starts getting mood swings, depression, anxiety, fucking floaters in his eyes, shit like this, libido issues, ED. There's a lot of stuff that comes with Clomid monotherapy, especially with the isomer zuclomiphene relative to enclomiphene. I would argue if you are going to do some sort of SERM monotherapy protocol, it would involve using enclomiphene instead of the combination therapy. So for him, in the short term, maybe it works. I'm not necessarily on board for the majority of people intervening in a hypogonadal state with Clomid as their first line therapy. Like, I would rather, well, first of all, I'd have a very, very deep dive look into lifestyle and diet models, exercise regimen, etc. before I look at just deploying Clomid or even TRT. Like, you can literally have one night of bad sleep, one night of drinking, one night of just fucking up entirely, show up, depending even on the time you show up, like your testosterone levels are regulated on a diurnal rhythm. They secrete, they pulse in a pulsatile manner. It's not just like they're bleeding at 700 nanograms per deciliter all day. If you show up at a later time in the day for your blood test, you had a really shitty night of sleep, you just drank recently, you could show up as hypogonadal on paper. It doesn't necessarily mean that you actually are though. What else? I had a couple notes I wanted to touch on too. Let's see. Yeah, basically the poor lifestyle, diet, could have had shitty sleep. Obviously he was symptomatic though for a long period of time, so it's likely a chronic issue. So I don't necessarily know if, all those things were a huge factor in his that snapshot in time of his test levels. But a lot of this stuff can boil down to certain lifestyle things that are just chronic, that people think their diet model is healthy, they think their exercise regimen is healthy, when in reality, they have autoimmune issues, they have this, their diet model is not congruent with X, blah, 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 a million different things. Micronutrient deficient because they only eat fucking this one food group because they're obsessed with blank. Like, I don't know, like there's a million reasons why you could have low T levels, and sometimes it's just a matter of some very simple diet manipulations and or fixing your sleep hygiene. And for him, you never know. Maybe he actually had needed intervention. And in that case though, in the case that somebody actually needs intervention, am I somebody who thinks clomiphene intervention long-term is a viable strategy? No, I don't think for the majority of people it is, but that is just my personal stance based on what I've seen over the years and my experience in the HRT space. So anyways.
Too old for that.
It's
like, it might not ever
put you on actual testosterone.
I didn't want it.
So he says he didn't want it.
Oh, why?
I don't know why. I just told you what he fucking said. You fucking heard it. I heard it.
What was the thought process there?
It can cause cancer. It's bad for your health in the long run. And there was an alternative method that might have worked. The pills don't have the same side effects that the injections do. And thankfully they worked for me.
So his doctor literally told the guy, testosterone causes cancer in the long term. Clomid doesn't have the same side effects as testosterone. And what was the last fucking thing he said? I don't know, some nonsense. So he's basically saying testosterone's way worse than Clomid because a big scary injection's fucking gonna kill you and it's cancer and blah, blah, blah. And he says it with such confidence. It's like, who's your doctor, dude? That's what I want to know. So, no, in fact, I would argue the exact opposite, to be honest. So, like, please explain to me where literally, okay, I could see the argument where you are saying, okay, you're backfilling hormone production from a more natural endogenous standpoint because you're stimulating natural production rather than injecting an exogenous source, consequently shutting down your HPGA, which can downregulate a bunch of different things in the body. Yeah, I understand this sort of argument there, but his tangent is like totally not even close to that tangent, which is like a much more reasonable debate. His tangent is it causes fucking cancer. Like, no, dude, please, like, show me the evidence where testosterone versus Clomid, the testosterone group got cancer and the Clomid group didn't. Like, what the fuck? And doesn't have the same side effects. Like, I would argue there's less side effects from tea if it's actually managed properly and based on your own individual needs. Whereas Clomid, you're going to have estrogen receptor antagonism for your entire fucking life. And then, I don't know what the other thing he said was, but to me, I've already outlined why I don't think Clomid is necessarily a viable long-term strategy. And even if you were going to use a SERM long-term, Clomid would not be my ideal choice. I think there are better candidates that are more selective and have less peripheral issues in their interaction with the estrogen receptor.
They worked for me.
Okay.
But isn't having like really low T bad for cancer risks and shit? Also?
It can be. But it was really weird because usually you think like low muscle mass, like really like small, skinny guys. I didn't really have that problem, but I still had like basically no testosterone. And you have no idea how much it pissed me the fuck off. Because my whole gaming career, I've been told that I look like a woman, very feminine, soft lips, no beard. And, you know, after so many years of that, it got really annoying, right?
You do have soft kissable lips. I know.
Soft kissable lips is, yeah, that one, even with the Clomid, I'm still seeing it.
Dude, in the dark, we can both pretend.
When I doctor, low testosterone, in my head, I just hear all of those comments and I'm like, these fucking trolls were right. God damn it.
They were right the whole time. I can't let them know.
The only real difference is that I can now build muscle mass more easily. And since I'm stuck at home, all I do is work out. Yay, fun.
So that's another way in which Clomid would be subpar to testosterone. Is you're going to build, if you cared about that, you would build far less muscle with Clomid than you would with testosterone. The ratio of free to total test increase is going to be disproportionately in favor of exogenous T injections. Not always in a good way. You know, you could argue the crushing of SHBG can be a little problematic for some people. It could be a minor difference for some though, if managed correctly. However, if you're inhibiting estrogen receptors, guess what that does too? It's very not useful for gaining muscle. So if you're going to compare one versus the other, testosterone far heavily shits on Clomid in terms of equivalent muscle growth milligram for milligram. Like, let's just say hypothetically you have a guy who's using exogenous T to reach a 800 nanogram per deciliter total versus the guy who's using Clomid to get to that 800 nanogram per deciliter total T. The guy who doesn't have estrogen receptors being antagonized and isn't, well, obviously if you're not functioning off of a pulsatile, you know, endogenous secretion, that guy's going to far outweigh the other guy in terms of sheer ability to pack on muscle. But above and beyond that, estrogen receptor agonism is very important in dictating not only how the GH-IGF-1 axis responds, but as well as certain hypertrophy processes that are going to be dictated, as well as just general health processes. So can't even fucking talk today. So anyways, no, it's not that one is going to be Clomid's not better than the other one. And like it's very hard to argue in favor of Clomid monotherapy over, like, especially when we're talking about Clomid and not like N-clomiphene, in my opinion. So yeah, like a lot of these statements, just a little fucking iffy to me.
Fun.
Nice.
Cool.
So how long? What was the period of time that you were just like zero T? Like,
I don't know. It might have been my whole life for all I know. I don't have a beard.
Current T levels? Did you get measured after the Clomid?
No, it definitely wasn't his whole life where he would have had no sexual differentiation during puberty. He wouldn't have a deep voice. He wouldn't have any of this shit. He would be, he would essentially be a pseudo hermaphrodite, you know? And actually even that, if, you know, the pseudo hermaphrodites with, mutations in the gene that encodes for 5-alpha reductase. Those ones still look like men, even with micropenises, because they had enough testosterone levels. So, you know, this guy, if he doesn't have a micropenis and he sounds like a guy and looks like a guy, I'm sure he had enough T his whole life. And as far as what is inducing the low T state, could be a myriad of things. There are a lot of things in this world now that are potentially seen as endocrine disruptors and things of this nature, as well as just general lifestyle and diet practices that are just fucking garbage, to be honest. So I don't know exactly what the reason was. Like, obviously I would have had to dig into his situation more to actually make a reasonable assessment, but I think it's safe to say he wasn't always like this.
Yeah, it was basic. I don't remember the numbers. They have the little bands that show you the ranges of normal, and mine were pretty much right in the middle, so that's where they were supposed to be.
Ooh. Well,
You
that's
don't
great.
take it. You still take it now?
Yeah.
So are you on it for
I'm
life?
I was supposed to have quit last year or like some months ago because what they want to do is retest and see if the levels have dropped or I stopped taking, then we retest and see if my system's restarted. It's going naturally, but because of the Rona, I don't go anywhere. No dentist, no doctor, and if I'm not dying, I'm not going anywhere. I've got like 3 or 4 refills with no checkup or anything.
When people
So I'm
do
just kind of
test cycles, they take something to kickstart their system, right? Like if you just inject testosterone, your own system can turn off. Cool.
Yes.
But then you can kickstart it when you're done injecting testosterone. And is that Clomid that they take? Do you know?
Yeah.
I know it's one of the couple of things. I know it felt really weird when I Googled it, and it's like Clomid helped me make 4 babies, and it's like all women. I'm
Yeah,
like,
I think
well,
they use things like Clomid and Nolvadex for PCT, post-cycle therapy, because your body's testosterone shuts down from the exogenous testosterone that you've been injecting into your body. It's like, oh, we've got plenty. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a
Yeah, so those are traditionally the 2 most commonly used SERMs in a post-cycle therapy context.
We had a Patreon who took testosterone or something, and he bought the post-cycle therapy at the same time. And somehow I never thought of that. Like I was like, that sounds wow, because that was like a fear I would have. Like if I were to do T, then I would shut down. So he just bought what you need to kickstart it at the same time he bought the T, and it's a level of thinking ahead that really shouldn't be so amazing to me, yet it was.
Dude, what's funny about that is one of the first things guys on even the bro forums would have shit on you back in the day if you bought your cycle and didn't have your PCT on hand at the same time. You would literally get nuked on the forums in your thread if you were like, this is my cycle, like what should I get for PCT? And you buy it after, like they will literally annihilate you.
Yet it was.
You should double up. So you went from angry and depressed and manic depressed feeling to feeling good. You up that T even more, you become an even better version of yourself, right?
I don't know, man. I have a feeling I might just loop back around if it's on.
Oh, no.
But then you push through again to the other side.
Yeah, you can loop twice.
My wife, she's laying in bed right now while we record this going, I want a completely emotionally unstable man that could blow up at any time. That sounds lovely.
So did your libido go even higher on the Clomid? No, it just stayed in a good spot. Okay.
And what he will probably realize long term is, while it may be okay now, don't be surprised if in 6 to 12 months it takes a little bit of a dip.
Okay. I thought you might say yes. All right. I don't know. But that's cool, man.
Really blessed in that regard. It could have gone down. It oddly could have gone up. It was abnormally high with no.
Because estrogen deprivation is going to have a significantly deleterious impact on your libido long term. So a lot of people don't realize that a big part of your libido is driven inherently through your estradiol. So even though on paper in your serum you might have a good estradiol level, if it's not able to actually get to estrogen receptors and agonize them because you have this Clomid, zooclomifene as well, occupying them, it can be pretty problematic.
Really high with no testosterone. I don't know why, but
some guys just want to get it.
Well, plenty of women want to get it, and they have low T.
Oh, true.
I didn't look at
you
it.
Probably had high estrogen and low testosterone, I would imagine.
Yeah, did they say you had like weird estrogen levels?
See, that would be what I was circling back to earlier, where if you had high estrogen levels, you consequently could have low T levels because of not a mismanagement, because it's not like you inherently didn't like manage it properly, but rather it is certain practices in your life that either you're exposing yourself to things that are somehow agonizing and causing negative feedback, or you are, too fat, or your diet sucks, or you're micronutrient deficient, or you don't metabolize estrogen very quickly because of deficiencies in certain things. There's a lot of different reasons for it.
Were they surprised that you were always a man? They're like, your transition physician should have taken care of this for you. I'm so sorry, ma'am. How have you been?
Dude, it's weird.
How
Because
many
of all
years?
That, huh?
how many years have you been living like this, ma'am? I'm so sorry.
Dude, you're hitting me right in my feels. I've had fans tell me that I'm like a trans icon in the gaming space. And I'm like,
Are you serious?
like, that's great that you have a role model, but that's not really me. It's cool that you look up to me like that. But the worst was I was doing a charity event. And I had a guy come sit down, turned out to be wanting to be trans, and just like.
Okay, so I'm not gonna play the rest of the story, but this is actually a pretty funny story. So I'd recommend just go watching the podcast if you want to see the rest of that. And if you want to see what they said about lock and load in the podcast too, just go down to so here we go, 203.22. So this is where they talk about lock and load. So if you want to hear a anecdote of a real life experience of kind of like what we're experimenting with here, check it out and you can get some, look at this fucking face I just paused on. If you want to get insight into the very soon to be product launch, you can be first to hear about it and understand exactly what's going into it and be first in line. It's going to be an innovative product. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe, check out my blog, moreplates.com. If you want to follow me on the other platforms, helps diversify the channel. So Instagram, it's moreplates_moredates, Facebook, Snapchat, BitChute, Twitter, TikTok, Apple Podcasts. If you want to listen to audio instead of burn through your data. If you want to support the channel, you can check out anything I'm associated with in the video description below, notably my HRT clinic, where you will not get thrown on Clomid monotherapy to treat hypogonadism off the bat. You will actually get your labs assessed properly and get good standard of care. And if you want to check out my recommended lab test panels, linked in the description below, as well as Gorilla Mind nootropic formulas and my Gorilla Mode pre-workout formulas, and soon to be the PKA collab lock and load formula as well through Gorilla Mind. That'll be on there soon-ish. And anything else I'm associated with, video description below. Thank you guys for watching. Talk to you soon.